service. Some hope-filled sentences. Mark 2:1, Behold, I am sending my messenger ahead of you. He will prepare your way. Isaiah 40, verse 3, A voice proclaims in the wilderness, Prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the wasteland a highway for our God. Isaiah 40, verse 5, Then the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Isaiah 60, verses 1, 3, and 6, Arise, shine, for your light is come. The glory of the Lord is dawned upon you. Nations shall walk by your light, kings by the radiance of your dawning. Caravans of camels shall cover you, dromedaries of Midian and Ephah, and all from Sheba shall come bearing gold and frankincense, and heralding the praises of the Lord. Isaiah 52, verse 7, How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of the one bringing good news, announcing peace, bearing good news, announcing salvation, saying to Zion, Your God is King. Luke 1:68, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, for he has visited and brought redemption to his people. The scripture reading for today that I'm going to focus on is Luke 1, verses 39 to 45. During those days, Mary set out and traveled to the hill country in haste to a town of Judah, and she stayed at the house of Zechariah and greeted Elizabeth. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the infant in her womb leapt, and Elizabeth, filled with the Holy Spirit, cried out in a loud voice and said, Most blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. And how did this happen to me, that the mother of my Lord shall come to me? For at the moment the sound of greeting reached my ears, the infant in my womb leaped for joy. Blessed are you when you believe that what was spoken to you by the Lord would be fulfilled. The title for this reflection is Make Babies Jump. I want to stop for a moment and recognize that our church family has experienced loss recently. There are 2 Christmas tables among their loved ones that will have empty spots. And there'll be empty spots in our hearts regarding those 2 people. We'll be able to look out in the sanctuary and see where they usually sat and realize they are no longer with us. There's another loss that happened this year that I want to be recognized. I think we need to remember this person too. Late this year, Christianity lost an incredible speaker, a powerful force for social justice, and in my opinion, one of the best preachers of the last 50 years, Tony Campolo. Tony was a Baptist minister, an author, and a sociology professor. I bet you didn't think you'd hear a person in a progressive church giving tribute kind of to a Baptist minister. I recall seeing a series of videos for sale. The videos had sermons from the 10 best preachers. Tony Campolo was one of the preachers featured in that video series. In the last few years, I've spent hours searching for that video series on how to preach. Haven't been able to find it. I think I first heard Tony Campolo speak in probably the late 1970s. He could speak like a machine gun for an hour or close to it and never use notes. He made comments in his sermons that I didn't think you could ever get away with saying in a church, and somehow he got away with it, and somehow that kind of endeared him to my heart and made him almost like a hero of the faith. He spoke at a prestigious Southern California university, owned by my denomination of origin. At the time he spoke at that university, It was not considered by that denomination to be appropriate for people to wear a ring, a wedding ring, any kind of a ring. And he commented about the priorities, the financial priorities of those who would not buy a wedding ring because it was wrong, but would go out and spend excessive amounts of money on prestigious cars. At times, he challenged entire Christian religion because our priorities weren't quite right. I've debated about sharing this example that's out there on a number of different tributes to Tony Campolo because some people might feel offended by the language. The language he used, I think, shocked people into seeing their priorities were not in harmony with the life of Christ. In the 1980s, I gather that it was common for Tony Campolo to speak starting like this. I have 3 things I'd like to say to you today. First, while you were sleeping last night, 30,000 kids died of starvation or diseases related to malnutrition. Second, most of you don't give a shit. What's worse than that, you're more upset by the fact that I said shit than the fact that I said 30,000 kids died last night. Tony was supportive of LGBT plus people when it was virtually unheard of in evangelical circles. I played a tape of him speaking one day. It was powerful. He was speaking about how to live like Christ would have us to live when we are in the face of work. I shouldn't say in the face, when we're working with people who are from persecuted backgrounds, such as gay people. There were a group of people in the church that I was at that time were young adults who were wanting to discuss homosexuality. I played that tape to set the background so people would not be highly critical and not say terrible things. I don't think there was a dry eye in the room when the tape was finished. Then we started to discuss the topic. In that group of conservative Christian young adults, I don't recall anybody saying a critical word about gay people. God, we see the empty spots at our Christmas dinner table, the spots for those in our congregation who passed away recently, and the spot that Tony Campolo was supposed to have too. At the same time that our hearts ache from the loss, we are thankful that you blessed us and blessed the entire world with these people. The lectionary reading in Hebrews 1:4 tells us that God spoke through the ancient faithful through prophets, but now God is speaking through a son. Well, how does that work? Philip asked Jesus to show him the Father, and Jesus answered, have you been with me so long that you still don't know me? Philip, whoever has seen the Father, whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? When you've seen the Son, you've seen the Father. When I was in college, I met an aunt that I had never met before. She had been adopted out as a baby. She never knew my grandmother, her mother. When I saw my aunt, I saw a young version of my grandmother. They did look a bit alike. She talked and sounded like my grandmother, who she never met because my grandmother passed away before she was able to locate family. She even laughed like my grandmother. In fact, you could kind of got the sense, if you knew my grandmother, that when you saw my aunt, you kind of got a glimpse of my grandmother. You saw and heard my grandmother. When Jesus healed people, we see God healing people. When we hear Jesus' voice, we hear the voice of God. When we hear Jesus laugh, we hear God's laughter. When we hear Jesus say, today you will be with me in paradise, we are hearing the voice of Creator God saying, today you will be with me in paradise. I want to go back for a moment to a part earlier in the narrative of the incarnation of Christ. Luke chapter 1 describes the angel telling Mary that she was going to have a baby, and Mary questions how this could possibly happen because she'd never been with a man. The angel informs Mary that her relative Elizabeth was pregnant, and Elizabeth was too old to get pregnant. The angel assures Mary that nothing is impossible with God. The story continues with Mary proceeding in haste to see her relative Elizabeth. I can almost picture this story happening now in 21st century. In the version that is in my mind, I can picture Mary hopping in Joseph's 4x4 Ram crew cab truck with a diesel Cummins engine and dual wheels and 4x4, starting up the diesel Cummins engine and taking off with the turbocharger whining, breaking the peace in the community. And while driving off, I can see this 21st century Mary calling her husband Joseph and saying, I'm off to see Elizabeth. And then calling Elizabeth on the phone too. And saying, hi Liz, it's Mary. Yeah, I know it's been a while. This is urgent, have to see you right away. We'll talk when I get there. And the truck blisters down the highway to Zachariah and Elizabeth's place. Mary arrives at Elizabeth's place, and that's where we pick up the story. When Elizabeth hears Mary, the baby in her womb leapt. I was invited to watch a religious program on social media. I was multitasking because I had so many things to do, far too many things to do. There's one line in the broadcast that caught my attention. I made a note of it because it was so powerful. This broadcast was by Bishop Stephen L. White. And what I remember him saying was, find someone who makes your baby jump. I don't recall anything else from that broadcast, but that line resonated for me. Find somebody who makes your baby jump. I wish I could have captured more gems from his remarks, but I just can't remember any. My sermon may take a very different theme than the bishop's reflection. I want to share you the story of a person whose baby jumped. Christian Collins is a social media influencer. He has 5 million followers on TikTok alone. In a video that reflects some on his life, which has been bookmarked over 7,700 times, liked over 170,000 times, and seen over 1.6 million times, he remarks about being taken out of class for testing when he was a kid. By middle school, he could remember textbooks and he did not need to study for exams. He's excelled in scholastics so much that he was building video games and managed to hack into the school's grading system. Unfortunately, he struggled to talk to students his age. A girl he had a crush on approached him one day, and another girl stopped her and told her to not talk to Christian because Christian was on the spectrum. From the short video, I get the sense that Christian was devastated. He came to discover that being on the spectrum was a gift. The gift allowed him to learn quantum physics, neuroscience, psychology, multiple coding languages, and more. He reflects something that was perceived as a curse ended up becoming my greatest blessing, the one I would never trade. I don't know what made such an impact on Christian, but I think the spirit of the Christ child somehow touched his heart. Somewhere along the line, something or someone on behalf of the Spirit made Christian Collins' baby jump. And Christian discovered that he had incredible gifts and that he was a gift. Who are the people who made your baby jump? Perhaps many years ago, perhaps recently. A loved teacher, a friend, maybe a parent, a neighbor. There are two challenges for us today. The first challenge is to find people who will make our baby jump and to spend some time with them so we can achieve our dreams and so much more. The second challenge is to be the kind of person who makes somebody else's baby jump. The December edition of the Christian Century has an interesting article by Rachel Mann, who's a Church of England priest and theologian. She mentions that the story background of the tinseled image Christ, in that background is a different story, and it's a story about a mother giving birth at a time in the world's history when giving birth was defined by risk. After reading Rachel Mann's article, I was left reflecting on the excitement and popularity of the Christmas holiday season, a holiday that even has a secular element that brings a sense of excitement and awe to people who are not Christian. The Incarnation, which we celebrate at Christmas, gives a view of God when God was weak and vulnerable, the Christ child, weak and vulnerable. The vulnerable presence of Jesus makes John the Baptist jump for joy in the womb. Perhaps you are thinking that you're too small, too insignificant to make a difference in someone's life. Bethlehem is considered to be the birthplace of Jesus. Micah chapter 5 contains a verse that is regarded as a messianic passage about Jesus. Bethlehem is the place from which the new leader will come. The New American Bible says Bethlehem is the least of the clans. The New Message Bible describes Bethlehem as the runt of the litter. Nadia Stefko, rector of St. Augustine's Episcopal Church, refers to Bethlehem as a backwater town. Now, I grew up in an area where there wasn't a lot of water. We didn't have massive bodies of water. We weren't close to the ocean. And it was a semi-desert area. So I would not use the term backwater, but I might use a term like this: one-horse town, Podunkville. Jesus was born in a one-horse town, in Podunkville, and grew up in Nazareth, a town that was notorious for having nothing good ever coming from it. And that did not limit Jesus' impact and ability to make babies jump. Your background does not have to limit you. With the power of the Spirit, you can make babies jump too.